if you can. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce today's speaker. I've actually known of Reggie for, I hate to say this, approaching 30 years, but haven't had a chance to meet him until recently when I was talking to him about speaking here. And I can tell you, you're in for a treat today, and he's also somebody that I'm very proud to call a fellow Georgia alum. Reggie is the Senior Vice President of Oracle Social Cloud. He is an internet and social media entrepreneur who leads a team responsible for the development of applications for the Oracle Social Cloud, a service that helps companies manage their relationships with customers on social media. And am I stealing any of your thunder by saying you might have some exciting things to announce about your job? So I'll let you talk about that, but Reggie's got some other interesting things to share with you today that were recently announced, I think as of yesterday, right? Prior to joining Oracle, Reggie founded the social cloud-based marketing platform Vitrue, and he's held executive positions at TANDBERG Television, where he led the company to a 40% annual growth rate, N2 Broadband, where annual revenues grew from less than $1 million to more than $35 million in under 5 years, and at WebMD, where he was instrumental in defining interactivity on the web. Reggie is a true internet visionary and has received many accolades, including Business Insider's 2014 Most Influential People in Cloud Computing, MIT's Distinguished Entrepreneur of the Year, and Ernst & Young's Entrepreneur of the Year in 2012. He also serves on several advisory and nonprofit boards, including Kids Link, BrightWhistle, Elemental Technologies, SoloHealth, Whitfield Academy, and the Brandery. He is a Terry alum. He holds a BBA in finance, and he also holds an MBA from the Emory University Business School. He and his wife, Holly, have 6 children, and for the moment, reside in Atlanta. Little tease for some of his exciting news. But it is an honor to host him this morning, so please join me in welcoming Mr. Reggie Bradford.
Okay, thanks, Scott, and welcome everybody. And can I get everybody to stand up real quick? And I haven't asked for permission, but can we get a let's go dogs, circle, woo 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 woo. All right, I had to check that off the bucket list. I just came up with that, and I was watching the videos from people that presented before me, and I know Katrina just told me Bernie Marcus didn't go to Georgia, so he can't do that. So I was trying to think, what can I do that Bernie can't? Anyway, really happy to be here and to see so many familiar faces, some from high school, some from college, some from various startups, some from Vitrue, other companies, WebMD, N2, et cetera. So I'm going to talk for the next maybe 15 or 20 minutes about a little bit about sort of what I see in technology. I've been in, as Scott mentioned, in the technology space for the last 15 years or so, and I want to talk about kind of some of the trends that I see today, and then I'll give you a story about, brief story about my background and career, and then, Scott asked me to address kind of where I see opportunities in the future, because I think that I personally feel like the next 10 years, as exciting as the last 10 or 15 years have been, I think the next 10 are going to be even more exciting and disruptive and explosive, and I know there's a lot of people in the room that are either in business or real estate or startups that are impacted by the trends and changes in the marketplace. So just a few slides to kind of guide us in the discussion, and then we'll get into questions at the end. But how technology has impacted every single industry, and this is just an interesting fact that 40% of the companies that were the top of the Fortune 500 in 2000, 10 years later, were no longer there. So, you guys have probably seen this in your own careers. Companies that we thought were invincible have been disrupted and are no longer as relevant. Companies like Kodak that completely lost their way in photography, and the iPhone, of course, completely disrupted that market, among other companies. And there's a list mile long of these types of companies. So if you don't continue to innovate and think like a startup, I think these big companies increasingly realize they're going to be perilous. But technology continues to always march forward, and you can see here, from the, Henry Ford that basically, initially the people wanted just a faster horse and buggy. And of course, they ended up coming up with the automobile, and then into Tesla today. And then on the other side, you've got the innovations that are happening now in mobile payments with Stripe and Square and Apple Pay. And we never thought that it would come this fast. That the form factor is changing in terms of credit cards, but then now people are completely, kind of cashless in many respects. And Jack Welch, who many of you guys probably know as a famous CEO at GE for a long time, if you don't have a competitive advantage, you don't compete. And he also said, face realities, it is not as it was or how you wish it would be. And so this is a reality of many, many companies, that these changes are happening, and you need to continue to innovate to stay up. So that's a little bit kind of, and we've been at the forefront in the last 15 years of watching some of these trends and how they're impacting businesses, mainly on the startup side. I actually am, working in a big company again. As Scott mentioned, I started a company called Vitrue back in 2006 that was acquired by Oracle about 2.5 years ago. And if you don't know, Oracle is the largest business software company in the world, about $40 billion in revenues. $15 billion of free cash flow, 140,000 employees in 180 countries, started by Larry Ellison. And so I joined them 2 years ago. And as Scott mentioned, just to kind of, I know you guys are dying to know, but we're actually moving to London for 2 years. And so we're really, really excited about that. It's been a very arduous decision-making process the last couple of months with family and friends and most of our lives in Atlanta. But I felt like the decision criteria was around my kids and giving them an experience that the world is truly global and connected as never before. And I was raised in the Southeast, and we didn't really have a lot of exposure to kids from different backgrounds and cultures and diversities and experiences. And so we wanted to, if we had that opportunity to provide that for our kids for a couple of years, it really wasn't career driven, but Oracle actually made it happen. So we're going to move over there. But back to the kind of my start and how I got into UGA actually. I grew up in Atlanta and was the youngest of 7 children, and we had a very good we grew up in Sandy Springs, played Little League ball with some of these guys here, and went to North Springs High School, ended up playing college football at University of New Mexico for 1 year. Hurt my knee, and then, really, but it was just an excuse to get back to Georgia because I had a lot of friends at UGA, and I wanted to go to UGA, so I transferred to Georgia. Graduated in 1989. I'd be remiss to say that Georgia was a wonderful social experience for me, as many that were in my fraternity. But I learned a lot about life, but I didn't put a lot of focus on my studies, and that's my mistake. It wasn't that the environment, although they have cracked down a lot on some of that stuff, I guess. But I think the best thing that happened to me is in my last quarter I met my wife, Holly, and I think she, you find someone in your life that you really want to fight for and that motivates you to push harder and to have a purpose. And so that was a big part of my experience there. I graduated and I'd worked on a beer truck in college, literally, to help pay for, fraternity dues and for the stuff at school. And I, as I mentioned, I didn't have a super strong purpose. I ended up going to work for Miller Brewing Company, not the distributor, the corporate. And I ended up moving to upstate New York was my first job. Long story short, I had 7 jobs in 8 years at Miller in finance, business development. I ended up in brand management, and that's something I really found I was passionate. First time I found something passionate, and ended up coming back here. And a buddy of mine from UGA, another connection, was starting a business called WebMD. Jeff Arnold, you guys probably know. we ended up getting together, and I joined him fairly early in the formation of the company. He had an incredible URL, WebMD, 5 letters, that was just phenomenal, and some capital behind it, and a big vision. I joined him and ultimately became CMO. We grew the company very rapidly from a value standpoint. The revenues weren't as big, but this was in the late 90s, kind of before the bubble burst. We got acquired in 2000 by a company called Healthion. It was like a $4 billion acquisition. We had about 400,000 in revenue trailing. So if someone can do the math on that, the multiple was probably a record. But it was an incredible experience. And we went in and we built basically the leading brand in the entire digital health space. And that was the asset that Healthion, that the company, Jim Clark, if you guys might know from Netscape, he was a Stanford professor and started a bunch of companies. He came after us to buy the company. Kleiner Perkins was on our board, John Doerr, and a bunch of other folks. Anyway, after that, had another startup that we led the Series A investment into in Duluth, Georgia, called N2 Broadband. I became president there. They had a sort of an idea to build interactive applications for the cable industry, more on a services basis. So they're working with Time Warner Cable to develop their interactive TV application, and we put money in. And a couple months after I got there, the founders asked me, they said, "We know you're not from the cable industry. We like your leadership. We'd like you to become CEO." So I did that in the summer of 2001. And we knew we had about 6 months of cash. And I remember thinking, guys, we're not going to raise money in the summer because VCs don't really work in the summer. We'll wait till after the fall. We'll wait till the fall, till after Labor Day, and we'll start our capital raise. So I went to New York City on September 11th to start kicking off our fundraising, and that's when the towers came down. And needless to say, we were 2 weeks away from running out of cash, and we ended up getting the capital raised, and then we built that company into the market leader for video-on-demand software for the cable, satellite, and telco industry. So we used open standard technology to connect between the cable, satellite, telco operator and the set-top. So if you use like Xfinity on demand or DirecTV on demand or whatever your cable, Charter on demand, it's likely that our software is powering that. That company was bought by TANDBERG Television for about $120 million, and then Ericsson bought TANDBERG for about $1.3 billion. So that got sold to Ericsson. In 2005, we sold that. Then I decided I was CEO of that company. I decided I wanted to solve this trend happening with 9 out of 10 people going on to buying products or services based upon a recommendation from a peer or friend back in 2006. And I was watching these websites like YouTube. Of course, everybody knows that, which you probably don't remember, is like Rever and some of the other ones, tons of them that failed. But I saw this democratization of content where some consumer from a tiny little town in, Bulgaria could create a video and could get, access to an audience that they could never get access to before in their lives unless they paid a lot of money to the television industry. And I felt like that was going to change our lives forever, and that I always felt the consumer was in control, but I thought that was going to give them even more leverage. So we started Vitrue as a platform to help brands enable brands inside this new environment. Started it as a kind of a video sharing platform for brands on their own websites. So think about like Pringles having a contest where they could get the best videos to put inside their advertisements, contests for videos, that kind of thing. That was in 06. By the end of 07, we had gotten capital. We were moving along, and we just hit a wall. We could not get the technology to scale. Our three largest and probably only customers were CNN, Weather Channel, and How Stuff Works, and they all fired us within 2 months. And we were kind of, it was at a very pivotal moment in certainly my life, and and I in over a period of 3 or 4 months, kind of laid off, about 75% of the employees, and it was really at that point my faith really became such a pivotal part of my, kind of my business and my experience, where I kind of took a big chunk of my stock and basically, turned it over to charitable, godly things, and said, hey, if I'm not going to work for myself, I'm going to work for you, because I felt like I was kind of searching for that purpose of faith, family, and business, kind of in that order, because through all these companies I have various, just focus on business or try to balance between family and business. And then anyway, so it didn't happen overnight, but over the next couple of years, we struck a partnership with Facebook when they had 20 million consumers, and I spent time with Sheryl Sandberg, the COO there, and said we want to really reposition our company to be the platform that marketers use to manage their presence on Facebook and be in the cloud. And we're just in Palo Alto this week, but I went out there to see her, and she's like, great, if you guys can scale with us. And so we did, and the company started, tripling revenues every year. And in 2012, we were approached to be acquired. We had 3 of the biggest companies in the world in Silicon Valley trying to buy us at that time, and Oracle bought it. And then they asked me to stay on and basically run their social platform globally. They bought 2 other companies. And I didn't think, that I would last there more than a month or 2, because, I'm more of an entrepreneur. But, if you think about, what Oracle's doing, they're really shifting to the cloud from, a very huge on-premise and database business. And it's a very exciting time in the company. And I'm now across the entire cloud portfolio, and that's what I'm doing in London. My boss is president at Oracle, Thomas Kurian. And so my deal with them was up this summer, and they asked me to stay on to move to London for a couple years. And anyway, so that's kind of the career. And then I'm in a whole bunch of different startups, which I'm really excited about, which I'll talk about in just a second. But are we good on time? Yeah. Okay. So let me just kind of sift through. These are things that I just wanted to, I've already highlighted some of them, but I just want to touch on these that I put together on when I talk to a lot of the younger entrepreneurs, which is a big part of what I'm very passionate about. I spend a lot of time with people that are trying to build businesses now, just to give them, some things that I've learned in my career that hopefully, in the successes and some of the failures. But, the first thing is believe with conviction. You're the only asset in the company when you start it, so you have to convince your investors, your board members, your management team. If you don't believe, then they don't, they're not going to follow you. The second thing is have passion about your idea. And the example I have is in 2008, or 2007, we had a video that, guys used to create videos of me talking about the future and stuff. And we talked about how social media was going to create millions of jobs. And the social media, the command center person, the person managing the social media presence is going to become more focal point of the brand than even the brand manager. They're going to replace the call center. And now, we've seen that happen, right? Anytime you have a problem with a service or a flight, or you don't typically call an 800 number. You typically go to Facebook or Twitter, or somewhere, and you post a complaint. And anyway, it's been a dramatic sea change that's just only beginning in terms of everybody in the world having a mobile device in their pocket, a smartphone with access to connections and people around the world. Be prepared for change. And again, I mentioned in all these companies, I think the word, pivot used to be a bad word in technology. It made it you think you didn't know what you were doing. But the reality is, if you look at Facebook and even Google, they continue to, really pivot is the better word than innovate. Innovate's kind of like incremental, but be prepared to find, that opportunity and then go for it once you do. Take risks and be open to opportunities. I remember telling a story in WebMD where we had, in the fall of 2008, we had $800,000 left in the bank, and we were launching our first ad campaign in the Wall Street Journal. And it was a double truck ad, and it was a $400,000 cost to place the ad. $400,000 of our $800,000 we had left in the bank. And so what we did, again, credit to Jeff on this one, was we created a little spot in the ad in the corner called Partners in Practice. And we went to these guys that were considering investing in the company, and we said, if you guys can get your investment closed, we will include you as a value add in the ad that launched the debut of WebMD. And these guys all needed a healthcare strategy. They're big healthcare CEOs. So long story short, we ended up using that ad to close $32 million of venture capital round, and 6 months later we were acquired. So that was a risk that I don't know if I could have taken, but we did. I don't know if I'd do it again. Expect the best, but prepare for the worst. So when I deal with the board of these startups, I'm always kind of, it's kind of, when you say believe with conviction, but also when you manage, you can't, have rose-colored glasses. We see this all the time, and some of you guys are with me on boards in some of these companies where it's like everything is just, so great. And this is what I mean about this one is expect the best but prepare for the worst, where you manage, to the bottom line, you manage to the worst case scenario, and you be open and communicate with everybody about that. Build the right team and have the right team on the bus. Again, just for the sake of time, I can't go through all this, but we've been through, a lot of people have come with us along the way, but we've also had, a lot of transitions in teams and management and people, but finding the people and building that culture, which, sort of ties together. When I had Vitrue, I really wanted to have, people described it as a Silicon Valley culture in Atlanta, but really I think the key for us was it was really a family culture. People cared about customers, and they cared about each other, and I still get, if anybody leaves or, because it's been 2.5 years. I mean, a lot of people, big companies, not for them, but the amount of, the emails that I get from people about how this company impacted, people's lives, not necessarily financially, although we did well there, but really just the relationships that they established that they'll have for the rest of their lives, the excitement they had coming to work every day, what we built, the exposure they had to companies like Apple and a whole bunch of the other big customers. We work with about 500 of the largest brands in the world. Give back. This is that one that I mentioned about my, sort of the learning over the time that's more blessed to give than receive, and the money that we donated to stock. Obviously, when we were able to do things with that, it was just incredibly, just fulfilling for us. And now, that's something that I push really hard for things that I do going forward and companies that I invest in and that I'm involved with, and you're seeing more of that too in some of the stuff in Silicon Valley. I was just met with a venture capital firm out there that I've never heard of this before, but they set it up and they're taking 10% of their profits to go towards charitable causes right from the outset. And he's right in the heart of Silicon Valley, and you're seeing more and more people that see that it's not only a biblical principle, but it's a good business principle. It creates the right environment. It brings in people that care more about than just a paycheck. Anyway, I think that'll become an even bigger best practice. I mentioned this already. Build a culture with strong values, and big believer in driving decision making as far down the company as possible, but hold people accountable. Both challenges and rewards. One of the things we did at Vitrue, which was very impactful, was we eliminated our vacation policy. And so we weren't the first that has done that. Netflix did it and a few others, but we don't have a vacation. We didn't have we do at Oracle. We didn't have one at Vitrue, and so people could take as much time as they wanted. It was incredible. It was a good move for our financial balance sheet, because we didn't have to accrue vacation, and you have to keep up with time cards and all that. It was a kind of a risk, because somebody could go and take 6 months off. The reality is, if they did that, they probably wouldn't be somebody that we'd want to keep. But we gave them that flexibility, and we have a lot of people that had that work for us that were from countries around the world, like India, for example, and they'd want to go back home for a month or something like that, which is totally fine. Anyway, that was a massive, move for us, because it told the employees that we trust them. They're a better judge of their time than we are, and it empowered them. And I think if we went back and looked, we would, people worked more hours than less. The other one that, within culture that, was a personal thing that I've never really talked about until, a couple weeks ago. I did a thing with Forbes is, Atlanta is billed as the city too busy to hate. And there's a lot of talk right now in Silicon Valley and about diversity or lack of it, especially with blacks and Hispanics. You go out to Silicon Valley and there is a huge population of people from Indian descent and Asian descent, but you cannot. It's hard to find people and people of color. And so I was in Atlanta, and I hooked up with a guy in our company that was African American that moved down from New York, and we sort of quietly had this initiative to dramatically change the culture and the character, and the diversity of the company. And he came down, around 20% of the employees were non-white male. And after we sold it, it was about 50%. And again, it the more people of diverse backgrounds you have, the more people feel like a family. It's kind of the opposite effect of what you would think. And it really contributed, I think, to the environment that we had at Vitrue, and that's something I'll continue to push for, because it's just the right thing to do in my opinion. And then just the last couple, clarify goals early and often with all constituents. I say that because our board and investors, we never really wanted to have a public company. That was not what I felt like was the right opportunity for Vitrue, and it wasn't what I want to do in that particular company. I didn't think that space had enough, kind of critical mass to be public. And so, knowing that and having the investors aligned around that, again, people mess up and they don't have those. They're just like, oh, we're just going to build a massive business. Well, that's great. What does that mean when Google comes along and wants to buy it? And then, inspired and engage your team, often and always, again, that's probably self-explanatory, but something that's really important. And then just a few other things for technology, be unique and have a competitive advantage, provide something of value to your customers, never stop innovating, and then be laser focused on those goals. And then, we okay? Yeah. Okay. Oh, great. All right. So, and then Q&A? Yep. Okay. So I want to just talk about, some of the things that I'm excited about in the future. And these are probably maybe things that you guys are excited about. Some of you are working on these or anyway. But the first thing is obviously cloud computing. The software technology industry, billions or trillions of dollars that exists today that is on premise or behind the firewall, and everything is shifting to the cloud. It completely is a paradigm shift in business models, go-to-market, speed, ways to innovate, quicker ways to deploy applications for companies to stay ahead of their competition. So that's one that I'm super passionate about, and we have a couple of companies. We have which I'll talk about in just a second. Mobile everything. Mobile's the first screen. Again, I know this is obvious probably to everybody in the room, but it's not obvious. Hasn't been obvious in the last couple of years. People I'm still amazed. Even startups that develop to optimize their experience for the desktop. But mobile, if it's not 80% of the viewing experience, it's it probably already is. Maybe I should take this one out because that's too obvious. But I'm still surprised people don't optimize for mobile first. The growth of data and algorithms to machine learning, algorithms and data to make better decisions than people can make is happening right now, and I'll come back to that in a second. The Internet of Things. Cisco predicted that by 2020, 50 billion devices will be managed by the internet. Just connected together. That's going to create gigantic implications to everything from connected car to the connected home, to your thermostat, to traffic flows, to the way cities are designed. It's a huge sea change. Customer experience. For those of you who have, which probably again is most of you have used, service like Uber, and you think about the experience that Uber delivers for you versus a taxi cab, the quality of the vehicle, the cleanliness, the transparency, knowing exactly where the driver is, the transparency of the fare, the ease of use on a mobile payment, that's kind of redefining, that space. But think about that experience across any product or service that or company that you're involved with, because I think that's where it's all going. I'm a big proponent of marketing technology. I was a CMO and spent early time in my career in marketing, and I think that you're seeing these huge companies like Oracle buying, lots of companies. Salesforce, Adobe, IBM are all getting aggressive in building out marketing clouds, because the media industry, the marketing industry was historically was very services intensive, i.e. spend a ton of money on advertising, television, radio, print, paid media, and services to manage that through agencies. And now I think you're seeing a big shift where that's moving much more towards technology that is more accountable, that you can prove an ROI. Not that paid media is going away, but I think ways to integrate that media together to determine, and I'll talk about that in just a second too. I'll come back. The age of engagement, where you have to engage on these social channels and anywhere that the consumer is hanging out. And then the collaborative economy is a big one that I'm really, really excited about. I think if social was the last wave, not that it's gone, the next one I think is the collaborative economy. So the collaborative economy would be like Uber, Airbnb, and WeWork, if you guys are familiar with, in the office space. There's a huge class of companies that are taking advantage of new business models around, excess capacity that's in the system and creating buyers and sellers and putting them together. There's even a new company you guys remember web vans? That was a colossal failure, but now Instacart is fulfilling that void of delivering groceries to your house at a $2 billion valuation. And digital health, I think, one of the most exciting companies that we're involved with, and is called Mana Health up in New York City. And basically, the notion is in health, with all these Fitbit, these devices that Fitbit's kind of just the tip of the spear, but all these invasive devices that can monitor your glucose and your heart rate and your steps and all kinds of information that's accessible again through a mobile device. And then connecting that together with your health record, your traditional health information, that ability and that desire to take those analytics and connect those with your physician so that you can actually have a much more, WebMD was kind of the information age for health, if you will. Mana's more about the data and action, age of combining that information of your clinical information with your device data to create, dramatically better diet, exercise habits, monitoring, save lives. And it's kind of something like 40% of people, there's premature death because people are misdiagnosed by the physician. Imagine if you had like exact, accurate data. So just kind of circling back real quick, again, a couple other companies that are, so that's the Mana's in the predictive kind of analytics for the health data. There's another company called Persado that is in the predictive analytics. So if you think about, paid media, 80% of that is in the ad that you buy. 20% of that cost goes into the creation of the ad, and specifically the language that you use in that ad that you send out. So think about an email you get from Verizon and that subject line. What this company Persado that I'm involved with in New York has done is they've used big data and algorithms to help determine what's the subject line that, based upon billions and billions of data, that is most likely that Scott Russell will open that email. And they've shown like 5 times improvement in open rates versus if an agency, nothing against agencies, but if somebody in a copywriter is just sitting around trying to come up with taglines for Verizon. And I've got a couple other companies, a company called Integrate that's basically taking all the paid media, resources online and integrating those into a unified sort of workflow and dashboard so you can determine which campaigns are more successful than others, so that you can spend more money on those campaigns and less on the ones that aren't driving leads. And then they're integrating that into the lead marketing automation lead system. I'm an investor in Lyft and Uber in the collaborative economy because I think those services are going to be, they already are having, dramatic impacts. And then there's a couple of local companies that I'm also involved with. CallRail was started by guys from Georgia Tech with $5,000, and now they have 3,000 customers. Basically, small businesses use phones. People use phones. to get to sign up appointments for like a nail salon or hair salon or any kind of service business, plumber. And so they basically manage those volumes of phone numbers to determine which ones are driving the best lead performance. And then a company in the financial payments industry called Now Account that's trying to disrupt there's a lot of disruption happening in the financial services where small businesses have accounts receivables that might, you might work with Coca-Cola and they pay in 100 days. Well, that's a lot of time for a small business to wait to get paid. So these guys will actually take your receivable and they'll pay you immediately for it, and then they'll go, get the money from Coca-Cola and give you cash flow, and they take like 2.5–3% for that. Anyway, those are just a few things that I'm involved with outside of Oracle as well. But and so that's pretty much my story. And this is just an interesting quote from a famous philosopher: "We shape our tools, and thereafter our tools shape us." So with that, you want to do some Q&A?
Yeah, if you have a question, we are videotaping this for folks to watch afterwards. It'll be on the website, and you can find a link on the Terry website. But if you would, wait, there are a couple of ladies circulating with microphones. So if you have a question, please raise your hand, and then when they bring the microphone to you, fire away.
All right.
Hey, Reggie, do you mind talking a little bit about cybersecurity's in the news a lot and how the cloud could be affected by hackers and things like that? I think one of the things I've heard is the safety of all the information in the cloud long term. Just get your view on that.
Yeah, great question, Scott. I would be the first to profess I'm not a security guy, and I'm really not I don't like write code or anything like that, so I'm not very versed. I'm probably as versed about it as a normal person, but I can just speak specifically to the kind of the way that Oracle thinks about this. And Oracle's been in the business of serving governments around the world, but specifically started with the U.S. government 40 or 50 years ago. And protecting that data and the integrity of that data and the authorization, logins, authentication has been kind of the hallmark of the business. And you can never say never, but that's just something that it's been at the forefront. I do feel like, to your point, and we're building data centers all over the world to keep that data inside the country or in a protected environment. I do think that the shift to the cloud is definitely potentially creates some vulnerabilities. If you think about any given company and the amount of applications that they're bringing in that could possibly infiltrate their platform or the mobile space specifically, in companies like AirWatch that are focused on protecting the mobile environment. I think it's going to continue to be a game of cat and mouse with the people that want to harm us, but I feel like there's not only with the big companies, the startups out there, there's going to be a lot of resources that are going to be available to. It'll be I think it's going to continue to be a very big issue. Yes.
Thanks. Reggie, you mentioned when you left at WebMD and went to N2, I think the investors said, "We know you're not a TV guy, but we like your leadership, and your leadership style." And you've been in a variety of different businesses. In running these businesses and running service lines, what do you look for, and how do you identify maybe one or two traits that you see in individuals that step out as you identify other leaders?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I either have I've been naive or had good fortune or good people around me, but that had that industry expertise. But you see a lot of people that'll just focus on travel or something, and they just keep going back. And I've been like Forrest Gump, going into all these different businesses. But the people that I think because of the experiences I have had, I actually probably shy away from people that are 30 years in the same industry. I think that every business needs new thinking and fresh approaches, and so I'm a big team sports kind of, and so I'm focused on the best athlete available, and really it's about, to me, I know it's probably cliche, but the passion, enthusiasm, ability to work inside a team. Obviously, the intellectual horsepower has got to be there, but it's less about relevant experience. It's more about attitude and competency, to me. Am I doing this or are you?
You mentioned the importance of where you're located based on your kids. When you look at your companies that you work with coming back to Georgia after collegiate days and you traveling back and forth to Silicon Valley, outside of the doors of the company, what do you see Atlanta, the greater metro Atlanta area, doing well, and what do you really see it doing better in order to continue to encourage that better conversation about Atlanta as a location for the types of businesses you've been involved in?
Yeah. So I just want to, let me just make sure I not take credit, but because I worry a little bit about the London thing, like I'm leaving Atlanta or something, and that's not what you said, I know that. But we had 3 companies in Atlanta that created like 2,000 jobs. So Atlanta's always going to be home, and I think it's a great place to build a business. We just happen to, it's more of a family. I'm just a little bit personal right now because I just don't want someone to think that we're moving to Silicon Valley for a job or something. But anyway, I feel like Atlanta's the thing that we're doing well. I think that right down the street, David Cummings, the Tech Village. I think the environments that are getting created that are more support groups and people helping each other and developing an ecosystem, I think that has lacked in this market. I think it's been kind of a lone wolf market. You have a success, you sell a company, your former employees, go off and they, repopulate and they start new companies or they join startups and stuff like that. But the community, I think, just hasn't, as much as people have tried, with the best intentions, I don't think you've had that community like you have in Silicon Valley. Number 2 is I think we're doing a better job of producing super high quality engineering talent from Georgia Tech specifically and other schools, but specifically with engineering, that has been a great resource here. And I would say, one of the challenges Silicon Valley has, I'm just out there again, I told you, talking about finding, talent out there, it's extremely expensive. You got to throw everything but the kitchen sink at people to come work for you, and their loyalty sucks. They're always looking for the next new thing. So, Atlanta as a place that people want to build something, they want to stick with it, they want to have balance. And then the access to the Fortune, 1,000 companies, I've always felt like was a big asset in Atlanta, and the lack of distractions. What is missing, I think, still is you just do not have the access to capital. And David Cummings would tell you, I'll tell you that. I raised almost all the money I've raised has been from outside of Atlanta. Angels kind of getting better here, but the institutional capital is just not here. So to me, that's the. And then the other thing is just finding these thematic areas that Atlanta becomes like dominant in blank. I think marketing technology, there's a growing, that's a big one. Internet, banking, internet security, those are the ones that come to the top of my head.
What would you go back and tell your 20-something-year-old self? Just with all the success and failures and everything that you've experienced, would there be something that you would go back and tell your younger self?
Jeez. I think God, that's a tough one, man. I tell you what I tell my kids. I try to instill in them, more of a value system and a sense of purpose. Stronger, conviction and faith, maybe than I had, and to follow their heart, whatever that is, and be passionate. Find something they're passionate about and go do that. Whether that's, whatever that is. If it's, nonprofit, fashion, nursing, find something that you believe in and go do that. And I just, I wouldn't change anything. These experiences help define who I am, and the troubles that I had helped build character. And I don't want to see anybody my kids go through what I went through, but that's who I am. I can't.
So important question. You moved to London. The dogs are playing at 8 p.m. Are you going to stay up and watch it, or are you going to tape it and watch it the next morning?
Somebody's got to help me figure that out. I got to get a sling box or something. Yeah, damn right. Maybe not for Acorn State, but certainly the conference games for sure. Actually, the Acorn State starts at noon, so that's probably fine. That's like 5 o'clock. Happy hour.
So I think we got time for one more question.
We got one here, or no?
All right. Well, thank you.
One more.
Oh, we do have one. Yeah, please.
Just to let y'all know, Laura Hodgson with Now Account, the CEO, is going to be speaking at the Metro Atlanta Chamber on the 27th. So if you'd like to come, just let me know.
Oh, cool. She's awesome, by the way.
She is awesome.
Unbelievably smart.
All right, thank you.
All right, man.
Nancy Wright-Watley, by the way, with the Atlanta Chamber, and also a don't go anywhere.
Oh.
Alumni board member too. So, thank you for being here today. We appreciate it. So it is our tradition with Terry Third Thursday to present a keepsake to all of our speakers. A local artist in Athens, Loretta Eby, makes each of these by hand for us. So for
Awesome.
you, and thank you. It's kind of heavy, so.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks,
everybody.
For those of you, oh, and by the way, there's one other thing. This is new. So as many of you know, in fact, those of you that are Sigma Chi's know, because it's actually going on the land where your house used to be, but Terry is building a new business learning community in Athens, and we are also giving all of our speakers a brick that will be going in the community. And so there will be a brick with your name on it, and thanks and recognition for your time here with us today.